Presenting Rip Van Winkle by Washington Irving.
The story is narrated by Diedrich Knickerbocker, a historian of sorts interested in the Dutch-American families of New York. He recorded their stories in Diedrich Knickerbocker's History of New York. And just for the record, he's a character created by Irving, but the book is real, but it's a satirical piece. It also inadvertently caused confusion amongst real-life New Yorkers who thought Knickerbocker was an actual person, a fact that amused Irving, but I digress. Our story begins in the Catskill Mountains, where we meet Rip Van Winkle, a descendant of Dutch settlers living in colonial America. He spends most of his time either fishing, hunting, playing or telling ghost stories to children, helping the village wives with odd jobs, or spending time with his dog Wolf. In short, he spent a lot of time not doing any actual work. These things, in addition to his kind personality, made him popular amongst the village women and children. He also had a son, Rip Jr., who shared the same tendencies towards idleness and generally doing his own thing as his father. Unfortunately, he also had a wife, Dame Van Winkle, who would constantly berate him for not doing any actual work. Though Rip did own a plot of land he could farm, he reasoned he shouldn't even bother working it, because every single conceivable problem that could happen to it did happen to it. For instance, the cows would get him. Then, they would get out. And any day he needed to work the fields, it would just so happen to rain that day. Whenever his wife's abuse got too terrible, Rip would wander over to the village inn marked by the portrait of King George III. It was a meeting house for, quote, sages, philosophers, and other idle personages of the village. It featured such characters as Nicholas Vettel, the town patriarch and a man who managed to create communication via pipe smoke, and Derek Van Bummel, the schoolmaster who was designated to read the newspapers to the town whenever a visitor was kind enough to leave a copy. Unfortunately, the inn could only work so well as a refuge. One day, Rip was idling about with Wolf when all of a sudden Rip began despairing out loud about his wife and his lot in life. Wolf, who had been the victim of Dame's abuse as often as Rip has, sympathized as much as a dog could. Later, Rip went squirrel hunting with Wolf up the mountains for a day. As the day began to end, fearful of Dame's angry words, the duo began to descend when a voice called out to them. The source of the voice came from a short and strange man with a big nose on his face and a bigger keg on his back. The man gestured to Rip as if to say, "Can you help with the keg on my back?" Although reluctant at first, Rip agreed. After a silent trek up the mountain, the crew made it to their destination, a hollow shaped like an amphitheater, surrounded on all sides by cliff sides. There, Rip encountered many more similar strange men, all playing a round of ninepins. Eventually, Rip decided to help himself to the liquor in the keg that he had painstakingly carried up the mountain. Upon discovering the excellent taste of the liquor, he decided to help himself to another round, and another, and another, and another, and another, and another, and then he passed out.
After Rip woke up from his nap in the mountains, he realized that it was morning already, and things were different. To start it off, his gun was not the clean, well-oiled machine he was carrying last night. Instead, it's been replaced with a rusty old gun. And it's probably those people in the amphitheater, those people playing bowling. They probably stole his good gun, and left him with the cheap, crappy one. So he began looking for them. But they weren't there. The whole amphitheater was gone. There wasn't a ravine. There's nothing there. And that's strange. How do you... Did they just pack up an amphitheater and leave? How do you do that? Well, where's Wolf? Wolf? Yeah, where did Wolf go? Maybe Wolf went down to the village. After all, he's a dog. Maybe he got bored and just ran back home. He'll be fine. So Rip decided to pack up his gun, which is now old and rusty, and then head back to the village. But when he arrived at his house, he discovered that it was in utter disrepair. His house was just in a terrible, terrible shape, which is very, very weird. Seeing since Donovan Winkle, his wife, even though she is abusive, she still keeps the house in pretty good shape. That's strange. Where's Dom? Why is the house so torn up? And the thing is, at that moment, a little dog came here. It's Wolf. Look, it's Wolf. But the thing is, he's not skinnier. He's scrawny, and when Rip called his name, Wolf, Wolf, the dog ran away. Like, what? My own dog doesn't recognize me anymore? What's happening? So he forged onwards, and he went up to the town square. Now, town square itself was also different. All the buildings were much bigger, they were newer, and they were a lot more crowded together. And there were a lot more people everywhere, too. It was different. So that was strange. What happened to buildings? How'd they build this all in one night? And this is a statue in the middle of the square. Where it used to be King George, now this is old guy with the name George Washington written under it. So Rip thought this was strange. Suddenly, a guy in a blue coat came up behind him and asked him, "Which side did you vote on in the election?" "Well, election? What election? Yeah, are you a federal or a Democrat?" It's like, federal Democrat? What are these things? No, I'm not a federal or a Democrat. I am a loyal subject of the King George and a resident of this village. He's like, "King George? He's British. He's a spy. Guys, a spy here." It just people just swarm and it's like crowd gathered around. Like, Tory, he's a spy. It's a spy. And Rip he's just bewildered at this point. He's so flustered. He's like, "Well, no, guys, I'm not a spy. What's going on? No, yeah, let me ask for my friends. Where are my friends? Maybe they can recognize me." And yeah, I say, "Sure, shoot. Who are your friends? Who are your friends?" He's like, "Okay, where's Nicholas Vedder? The guy who used to run the inn. We used to sit there all the time. Yeah, where is he? Nicholas Vedder? Oh, he's dead. He's been dead for 18 years. Well, to fight the war, and he just died. There used to be a gravestone, but the fat apparently rotted out." It's like, what? Nicholas Vedder's dead? What do you mean 18 years ago? What? So it's like, well, what about Rom Bernstrom? He also sat with us at the inn. Where is he? Him? Oh, he also went off to fight in the war. He became a soldier in the Revolutionary War. Revolutionary War? What Revolutionary War? Well, yeah. What about being a soldier? So yeah, he died at Stony Point. He fell into a ditch and died, and he just never came back. And well, that sucks. What about Van Bommel? Yeah, he's the school teacher. He used to sit with us. He had all those newspapers and stuff. Oh yeah, Van Bommel. Van Bommel went on to become a general in the army, a militia general, and he was really successful too. So afterwards, he became a congressman, which is what all generals go on to do. So like, whoa. So 2 of my friends are dead, and one of them is a congressman now. And all this was 20 years ago. What happened? It's like, does no one recognize me? Does no one know poor old Rip Van Winkle? Suddenly he spotted someone in the crowd. It's like, "Hey, you, what's your name?" And so she came forward and replied, "Oh, I'm Judith Gardenier." And it's like, "Well, who's your father?" "Well, my father is Rip Van Winkle, but he ran into the woods 20 years ago, and he just never came back. We kind of just assumed he died. Never seen a search party or anything." "Well, what about your mother? Where's your mother?" "Well, my mother, she burst a blood vessel yelling at a merchant, and she died." So, yeah. Well, if your mother was Dom and your father was Rip, then I'm your father. I'm Rip Van Winkle. I've come back. It's like, what? Rip? No. And then someone elderly in the crowd actually recognized Rip. And she's like, "Whoa, it is Rip. It's Rip, guys." It's like, who? It's Rip. Rip Van Winkle came back. It's Rip. Rip Van Winkle. He's back. And so Rip settled into his old normal life, and he lived happily ever after for the rest of his life, which isn't very long, probably.